So you have an Arrma 3S and you want to go faster. I don't mean just a little bit faster. You want to go a lot faster.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
What you need is much taller gearing. Stock, this truck has a 57 tooth spur gear in here, and that limits how big you can go on the pinion gear. I have a 26 tooth pinion in here, and it brought the truck up to a little over 80 miles an hour on the stock motor with a ZTW 120 amp ESC. 4S capable, about $45 for this ESC, but I want to go a lot faster. So what I'm going to do is make a custom spool. It's going to be a custom spur gear assembly here where we can run these Kimbrough gears. Now I've run these in my Traxxas products, getting my Bandit well over 100 miles an hour. My Rustler is well on the way. These are inexpensive, very durable, and readily available. So $6 for this. And what we're going to do is we're going to modify the stock slipper assembly. Now Mile High RC did a great video on this already. I'm not going to go in nearly the level of detail he did, but what I'm going to do is focus more on actually making this spool. There were some things in the video he did, great video, but some things that just weren't clear to me. So I'm going to show you step by step how to put this spool together and how to make the gearing in your Arrma 3S much taller. My goal is to get this to 100 miles an hour on 4S, and we'll see where we go from there, but it should be easy to do because you can run a 44 tooth spur gear on here. So you're going to lose like 13 teeth. So you can go up to 13 teeth bigger than on the Pinion. I'll probably start off running like a 31 or a 34 tooth Pinion gear with this setup. This thing's absolutely going to rip. So stay tuned and let's get started on the build for the spool. Alright, so I already mocked up a broken slipper clutch assembly here to make sure this was going to work, and so I didn't mess up my good one. But I'll show you real quick what's involved here so you can decide if this is something you want to try or not. Now the hex driver I'm using here is a Shergo unit. These are really nice. If you haven't invested in a set of hex drivers yet, you definitely want to. I was using Allen keys for the longest time, and I can't believe I was. These will greatly reduce the number of stripped hexes you have, and just make anything you do with hexes so much easier. Alright, so if you open up the unit here, you can see I have a washer in here. So you'll need a washer to take up some of the space, but the most important thing is the Kimbrough gear. You just have to put it onto the slipper assembly, and you want it nice and snug like mine is here. I actually used my Dremel tool attachment to slightly enlarge the center. Sometimes they'll fit without adjustment, sometimes they don't. Mine needed a little bit of help to get it on here, but as you can see, it's really snug. And I did some tests to see if I could drill through this readily. What I found worked best is I took a Dremel tool and put a little notch, a little divot in the metal plate, and then you could drill right through it. So what I'm going to do is when I actually make this slipper assemblies, I'm going to line up the holes on the gear, mark them with a marker, put a notch with the Dremel tool, and then we're going to drill through the assembly in 3 places, and then we're going to pin it with a plastic pin, which will hold everything in place. And this will make more sense once I actually go through this step by step and show you guys how this all goes together. But that's the process in a nutshell. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take apart the big rock and get to the slipper assembly that's in here that's in good working order. Okay, so those of you that are not familiar with working on the big rock, What you're going to want to do is go ahead and start off by flipping it over. We're going to remove the screw that holds this plastic piece in so we can slide it out of the way. So it's right in the center here. Looks like it's probably a 2.5 millimeter hex. So we're going to pull that, flip the truck back over, and then we're going to go ahead and slide this out, move it out of the way. Now what that does is it provides us access to the power module here. All right, now the next step is we have to remove the tube here. So we're going to pull it forward and then pull it back out this way and set this aside. Now what we're going to do is go ahead, it says pull here. We're going to pull up on this, and while it's pried up, and then we're going to pry it out here and here with a screwdriver. We're going to twist it and slowly walk out the power module. So I got this up, screwdriver's in. Sorry, it's hard to get this on camera, but I'm just walking it out. Once it's started, I don't have to hold that up anymore. There we go, that's out. And I'm gonna pull this out as well. All right, there we go, this unit's out. You can see here is the slipper assembly, and here's the stock 57 tooth spur gear that we're gonna wanna remove. So now we just need to remove these 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. This looks to be a 2.5 millimeter hex here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop these 3 screws out of here. Now we're just gonna slide off the cover here. You can see I have a 26 tooth pinion in here. We're definitely gonna go bigger on this at some point, maybe not right away. 26 might be sufficient for starting off, because when we drop this from a 57 down to a 44 tooth, that's gonna make the gearing much, much taller. All right, so now we're just gonna pull out the slipper assembly. We're gonna go ahead and take our 2 millimeter hex driver, put it down here into the hex screw that holds the slipper shaft together, and we're gonna unscrew this. Okay, now that that screw is loose, you can see we have this piece here. I'm going to set it like this. We have the slipper clutch and all these plates here as well. So I'm going to pull them out and set this aside, and we can use this down the road if we want to. This setup's only going to be for speed runs. I would want to keep this slipper assembly if I was, you know, bashing and running it on road. But for now, this is going to be a speed run setup. As I mentioned earlier, this may or may not fit onto the slipper shaft here. It's self-centering if it's on there, and you want it nice and snug so that it's perfectly centered, you know. And how I did it is I have this Dremel tool attachment that just happens to fit in here about perfectly, and I put this in a drill so I didn't spin it too fast, and I just worked this around. I spun this around it while it was on the drill and just slowly enlarged it little bit by little bit, and eventually it was the perfect size where it can just barely fit on here. So that's the first step. Now this next part is going to be a little tricky. I want to get this centered here as good as I can, and we're gonna draw 3 dots in a triangle shape, basically. So we're gonna do 1, 2. Don't want to move this, which I did. I want to keep it centered. Those 2 dots look good. So 1, 2, and 3. I think will be here. All right, so we're gonna try to do the same thing. We're gonna go 1, 2, and 3. Let's see how that came out. There we go. I think we're in business. And then what I'm gonna do is drill these holes first, put this back on, and then I should be able to line them up with a marker hole, a marker dot through this way. I wasn't recording. I put a bit on my Dremel tool that would dig into the metal, and I made a depression in the 3 spots where I want to drill through the disc here. Okay, now I have a block of wood with a hole in it, and I'm going to start off with a small drill bit to drill a pilot hole. So there's my 3 holes. I am definitely not the most mechanically inclined person in the world. So it's one of those things, if I can do it, you can probably do it too. And that 3rd one was a little tricky, but we have 3 holes and they line up reasonably well. Not perfect, but reasonably well here. And the pin I'm gonna use will fit through. There we go. They're pretty good. Again, I'm gonna start off with the Dremel. Okay, got our 3 holes here. So now this piece might be tricky. What I'm gonna do is place it on here, get it centered the best I can, and then I'm gonna take my marker and mark these 3 here. Now this plate was pretty difficult for me to drill through. When I was using a small drill bit, it just was not doing it for me. This one here, just a standard drill bit, but that allowed me to drill through it. When I lined these 2 up, they weren't perfect, so I took a pair of channel locks, ripped them, and then I drilled through with the 2 pieces together. And the holes look great now, I think. And then here's the other part. So hopefully all 3 of these will line up. I have this large washer here. You could go even bigger. I think bigger is almost better, but keep in mind you're gonna have to drill holes through it so that you can get your pins in place. So that's the only thing I have left to do now, but everything's lined up. One other thing I did is I put an O-ring on this side to take up some slack. You can probably see it down in there. It's just slightly bigger than the uneven, here I'll take this off. See here, this fits just outside of it without blocking the holes.
So that's there to take up the space between these two pieces. And when it's compressed, it's just about right. So for this plastic washer, like before, I'm gonna center it, mark it, and then drill it out. This one's not as critical as the holes. I wanna make them a little bigger than necessary because its purpose is simply to be a spacer and doesn't have to have the tightest tolerances. Okay, I had to tweak it a little bit, but that hopefully will be my final time having to mess with this. Lay this on top. Put the screw back in here. Okay, snug it down a little more. And now I'm gonna go ahead and cut the pins. Leave a little bit extra. Right there. Now the material I'm using for the pin here is just a piece of, you know, when you get the plastic parts with RC cars, sometimes they're held together with plastic. You have to twist the pieces out from the plastic. That's all that is. But there's our 3 pins in place. I was going to try to melt these pins into place. I ended up just using super glue gel. I think that'll hold them in there well enough. And these pins need to be flush on this side. Just gonna push the pins the wrong way. Push these back this way. Now I need to go ahead and set the gear mesh. And you'll notice this 26 tooth is about as small as I can go. So this 46 tooth Kimbrough spur gear is about perfect. Go ahead and put the cover back on here. Now I'm going to go ahead and slide the power module back in place. There we go. Go ahead and put this tube back in place. Front end first. And then seat the bearing in place. And then snug the O-ring up. And then finally slide this piece back in place. Flip the truck over and screw it back into place. All right, there we go. And I'll report back after running it, but I'm hoping this will get me up to 90 plus, maybe even close to 100 on 4S. And of course I can go much taller with the gearing. That was a tough one, but maybe this will work for some of you guys as well. And if you come up with improvements on what I did, please put the improvements in the comment section. All right guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.